Hey guys, sorry it's been a while since you've heard from me. I have actually been struggling with depression quite a bit, and that's what I want to talk about tonight. I have struggled with depression since I was 14, and when I was younger, it was really more that deep, dark despair, existential dread type feeling. And I've really had a long journey with depression, and I've done my best to be very open about my experiences, mostly because it is still, even now, very stigmatized. Although we are making a lot of progress with mental health and mental illness and everything that comes along with it. So I have been struggling a lot over the last month in general, just feeling very unmotivated, not really sure what I want to talk about, what I want to bring to the channel, finding it really hard to even just sit down and make a video. And I didn't want to just no longer use this channel. I enjoy doing it and I knew that this would pass. But I was trying to figure out how to step back into it and get, my toes wet again with hopefully sparking that motivation. And I thought that I would come to you guys tonight and talk more about some of the things that I utilize when I'm going through a depressive episode because I know I'm not the only one, first of all. And second of all, let's face it, especially if you live in the northern states, it is still winter. Today was 20 degrees out. Yay! My driveway is a giant sheet of ice, and to be perfectly honest, I get really sick of looking at gray and cold. I miss green. I miss seeing the color green. And it's interesting being from Washington. People ask me all the time, wouldn't you get depressed out there because it rains all the time? It actually doesn't rain as much as you'd think it would. And not to mention the fact that Washington is the evergreen state. So I just got used to seeing green. But here in Minnesota, I struggle with seasonal depression quite a bit. And, you know, I've had I've had postpartum depression with both my kids. I have just struggled a lot. And I really wanted to hopefully just take this and utilize it in a way that hopefully I can help you guys when you're struggling with depression. If you are, my heart goes out to you. So let's get right into it. Um, some of the things are going to be books, some of the things are going to be decks, and some of the things are just going to be items and suggestions. First of all, when you're going through a depressive episode, it's important to be gentle with yourself, and it's important to kind of lower the bar of expectations that you have that you put upon yourself. I personally am very guilty of just expecting that I need to do everything all the time and constantly be productive because I sometimes feel that my worth is valued in that. And I'm trying to unlearn that because that's something that's really been programmed into us in this society. So when you're going through a depressive episode and the dishes in the sink are piling up, start with just washing one dish. I mean, sometimes I realize that if I can do something, then I'll be able to do it. And remove that concept of just feeling guilty in that vicious cycle of you're not doing the thing because you don't feel like doing it because you are depressed, but then you get more depressed because you're not doing the thing and it's your responsibility to do it. Just start small. It's it's been helpful for me. So, the other thing that I wanted to suggest is never underestimate the power of writing something and burning it. To be perfectly honest, I have used this so much throughout my practice. It's insanely cathartic, and it was actually my first spell. But I have this cute little notebook here that a friend gave me that it's called the Negative Notebook. And you could easily make one of these yourself, but it's kind of cool because it's just got these little matches on it and a strike patch right here, and you just basically write whatever it is that you need to deal with and to get out, and then you can just light it up safely, mind you, in a fireproof dish with some water around, all that stuff. Be smart. Um, the other thing that I would suggest is just keeping a journal, getting those feelings out. Especially that they should not be up in here all the time. You will lose your mind. And for me personally, I just would get more fatigued if I was holding everything in. So having a safe space to do that is really helpful. If writing doesn't work for you, you can speak to a therapist. If that doesn't work for you, you can speak to a trusted friend. Just get it out. So, um, my biggest things that changed the course or the trajectory of my struggles with depression were medication, talk therapy, and self awareness. Those are the three things that really made a difference for me being able to, even now, go through a depressive episode and still be generally mostly okay. Um, I don't feel awesome, but I can still do what I need to do. And that has worked for me. Now, I know that meds can be tricky. They don't work for everybody. A lot of people aren't comfortable taking them. Me personally, it has made a huge difference. Talk therapy has been incredible in the way that it has brought about more self-awareness and more of an awareness of things that I didn't even see within myself, be it good or things that I need to work on. So I will say that those are the big three that have really, really helped me when it comes to dealing with depression and just overall self acceptance and just generally being happier. But back to the more witchy things. um, Now, I'm not super big on crystals anymore in my practice, but I do still work with them on occasion. And I do still have the ones that are special to me scattered about in here. But the one that I have heard that has always been and has worked for me, that has always been helpful for mental clarity, is fluorite. So fluorite will generally look like this. It will have some purple tones in it and some green tones, various shades. This is a point, but it comes tumbled and raw. It's fluorite isn't too expensive to get a hold of. Um, and it's not too difficult to get a hold of. Just be mindful of where you're buying crystals because there has been a lot of talk about them being unethically sourced, and I'm trying to be more avid about that within my own practice. So, just a little FYI. But I have noticed that this does tend to really help me with mental clarity. So that's a suggestion that I have. The other is just to find a stone that you really resonate with. It can be one from nature. Mine, my personal favorite right here is just this, I believe it's a quartz, um, but it is soft because I got it in Washington and I picked it up off the beach. So it is just so wonderful to hold. And for me, it's just a piece of home. So I have that connection to it. But you can go and find a place in nature and just take, a stone that calls to you and hold it if that works. And for me, it's just always been something that has helped keep me calm and then helped me kind of visualize if I'm not in that place right now. If I'm not at the beach or if I'm not on hiking through a trail, I can kind of hold something like this and the energy will sort of bring me back there and I can sort of creatively visualize being in that space. And that tends to help me be calm. Um, so that's a suggestion that I also have. Another is um, never underestimate the part of prayer. Now, this is something that I kind of wanted to do more of a video on at some point, just discussing prayer and sort of my struggle with that word and deprogramming my thoughts and feelings on it. But I have really been diving deeper into prayer in my practice as a way to communicate with my deities and using it on a more regular basis. So I think that this is something that is truly powerful because words are powerful. Now, one of the things that I really like to use to utilize this is prayer beads. These, a good friend of mine, she made them for me. These are my Freya ones. And I will hold these and oftentimes people will go through them and recite a prayer or something and, go through each of the beads. That's usually how traditionally prayer beads tend to be used in various belief structures. But for me, I just like to hold them and say what I need to say, even if it's just like I'm holding these to kind of open up a connection or a channel with Freya and just being like, hey, I'm really struggling right now. I just need to talk to you for a little bit. And even if you're not sitting at your altar, that's one of the great things about these is that you can take them anywhere with you. So I do tend to do that even if I'm sitting on the couch and, watching my kids play and stuff. It's just been a lot more beneficial to me. The other thing that I really connect with and always have is amulets, or talismans. Now, I tend to use those words interchangeably. I personally do kind of want to dive down that rabbit hole a little bit more of splitting those two and what's what, but I tend to really love to wear pieces that I find or I put magical intent into. And while going through this depressive episode, I ended up purchasing a Freya necklace for myself. I've always wanted this one. You guys recognize this one. Um, but yeah, it has fur with our cats, and then she's got her falcon cloak, and then right there is a moonstone, which honestly I would have preferred a stone that was a little bit more fiery, just because that's what I associate Freya with. But I associate the moonstone with the divine feminine, so it's just kind of nice to have a piece like this on you that connects you with divinity, should you follow a deity in your practice, or even just a specific intent if that's what you would prefer. For me, it's just been very comforting. And I think, although it's simple, it's powerful. Now we're going to get into the three books that I tend to go to when it comes to this sort of thing, be it mental health struggles, depression, and or just dealing with stress, I guess would be the best way to put it. The first one is The Witch's Book of Self-Care. This is by Anne Murphy Hiscock. This book is awesome. As you can see, I have taken it and put a ton of sticky notes in it. It goes from just self-care and magic all the way to mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and household. And to me, all of these things are connected. So I do tend to cleanse my house a little bit more when I'm going through a depressive episode, or at least try to, even if I'm not standing up and doing the whole shebang. I'll tend to burn more incense that I associate with cleansing. So for me, that's cedar. I really associate cedar with cleansing. So I'll tend to burn more cedar or just scents that comfort me. Um, Again, or aromatherapy, like, you don't underestimate the power of that either. But this book is fantastic. There are recipes in here. There's even ways to bless your water bottle. I mean, all these things that we overlook. It's incredible. Basically, just remember to hydrate. Remember to be comfortable. There are spells in here on journaling prompts and how to keep yourself or your brain organized when it doesn't feel like it's organized. And she has like daily rituals, spiritual vision board, which I thought was a really awesome idea. And then that's another one that I wanted to mention, is that for me as a creative person, it is really, really hard for me to feel creative when I'm going through a depressive episode, but at the same time, it tends to be my salvation. So doing something like focusing on your goals, creating a spiritual vision board, something like that, actually, I do think would be really helpful. But it is hard to just kind of get that ball going. My creativity tends to struggle a lot when I'm going through a depressive episode, as does my um, spiritual practice. So my spiritual practice has been suffering more than my creativity through this episode. But yeah, this book is fantastic. It is loaded with just ideas for self-care. Even if you're not going through a depressive episode, I do recommend this book just because it is really wonderful for anybody who just wants to turn their magic more towards the self-care aspect and take care of themselves a little bit better. Because, you know, I personally believe that I can't be my whole fantastic self if I'm not taking care of me. And I can't be a good mom. I can't be a good witch. I can't be a good wife. I can't be a good friend. I can't be a good sister, daughter. It's not gonna work. And I can't be a good YouTube content creator if I'm not taking care of myself. The other one that I picked up weirdly right before I started going through this, which is strange, was this book. It's called Empty Cauldrons. This is by Terrence Ward. This book is all about navigating depression through magic and ritual. And goodness, it has been so helpful. Especially because, I mean, he doesn't shy away from trying to define depression in the individual, trying to navigate depression in the spiritual sense, what it does to the spirit, and there are a lot of journaling exercises in here, which I've also found really helpful. Um, and there is strategies for the spirit, which is kind of what I'm doing in this video as well, but it's all about various things you can do. So, I won't go too much into detail, but I would really recommend this book. There are rituals and routine. So, for instance, there's a simple depression ritual, which, if I remember correctly, is very simplistic because when you're going through a depressive episode, it is hard to do much. So anything overly complicated is going to just make you unmotivated, in my opinion. At least that's how it's been working for me. So simple is better. But yes, I highly recommend this one as well. And then the other one that is really awesome is called Witchcraft Therapy. This is by Mandy M. I had to dyslexify and read the cursive. Yeah, if you just don't know, I dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyscalculia. It's been great. Um, but yeah, this is a fantastic book in the sense of it really goes into also self-worth. So a lot of the spells in here and a lot of the rituals are kind of getting your groove or getting that oomph back or kind of knowing your worth, which really love, especially when you are going through something like this. Um, like there's a whole section on here that's about being gentle with your trauma, rid yourself of stank ass energy. Like it's just fantastic. Um, Stop shit talking yourself. Yeah, that was a tough one for me for a long time, and there's still aspects of it that I'm unlearning, but I'm doing a really good job and I am proud of myself. But yeah, this book is fantastic. There's a whole section on mental health magic, so it goes through, panic attacks and cutting the cords with your former self and how to cope with sad witch season, which is seasonal depression, which is what I'm kind of going through right now. There's also a whole section on how to navigate social uh, relationships and things like that. So setting boundaries and getting closure and things like that. It is a really fantastic book. Again, these are kind of my go-tos for stuff like this. Now on to decks. Now, the first one I'm going to mention, I will say with a little bit, okay, camera, a little bit of a caveat. I think it is really important to not engage in shadow work when you are struggling with depression. That is something that you really need to be doing when you have a little bit more of a firm foundation. When you're going through a depressive episode, it kind of feels like that foundation is crumbling beneath you. I used to always equate my depressive episodes more to the Tower card. Um, in the first tarot deck that I had, the Tower card was depicted as a tornado. And so I used to actually have reoccurring nightmares about tornadoes whenever I was depressed or emotionally just going through some stuff. Um, and that's the best way to put it. So you don't really want to be going through something like that or dealing with practicing shadow work when you are not in a place that your life feels stable. At least for me, I struggle. And plus I couldn't even fully go into shadow work and gain what I need to gain from it if I am just struggling. So I will say that this deck does tend to bring about shadowy feelings, so that's something that I do want to recommend when it comes to that stuff. But I love this deck. It's called the Reclaim Oracle. I've talked about it before on my channel, and one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is because this deck is very, very good for identifying emotions. Um, so if you want to lay some cards out and talk about or try and figure out why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, or maybe you can use one of these as a, let's try to focus on my face, um, significator card. So I think that that would be really helpful for trying to identify the emotions. I've actually brought this into therapy one day and I showed my therapist. She thought it was the coolest thing ever. So, um, I do think that the Reclaim Oracle is very, very helpful for that. Just be careful because it can be a bit shadowy, at least in my opinion, for just the types of emotions that it shows up in that show up in here. It can provoke some shadow stuff. So, um, on the flip side of that, if you want to talk about personal empowerment, the Personal Power Oracle is fantastic. Um, I tend to take one of these and draw it, and then I will just leave it at the altar for the day, or I will take um, the the title from the card. That one says "I am good enough." I don't know why it's not celebrated, or "I am celebrated." This is actually the author right here. She's beautiful. Um, I really love this deck, and I love her art. I think it's beautiful, but I think that when you're going through a depressive episode, this is something that can be really, really helpful, especially I am supported. Just even reading something like this helps you remind yourself of the things that you might be missing while you are kind of in this stage. Yeah, I love this deck. And for me, I've accepted depression as part of who I am. And I think that's also helped me deal with it a lot better because it's just this will pass. And I know I know who I am and what my worth is, but sometimes I need a little bit of help while I get through this because it does not feel good to feel B, and especially when you don't know why. Um, the other one I want to suggest is the Sacred Self Care Oracle. I don't use this a whole lot, but it is helpful in very specific situations, especially if you are struggling to kind of figure out, if you're struggling to feel good, and maybe you think, I need to have an idea of what to do, what I can do for myself. This is a really good deck for that because it has a whole, like every card is just a self-care activity. Some of them are witchy, which is fantastic. I'm trying to figure out the perfect place to like hold the card. Here you go. So yeah, I do think that this one is really helpful for that, especially because I mean, you could even do, say you're struggling to do a certain activity, you could actually, again, use that as the significator and then draw tarot cards around it and do a whole reading on just like, why am I struggling to do this? How will this help me? Or, there's, you can really get creative with something like this. And I think that's something I need to do more. um, Now, I'm going to suggest only two tarot decks, and one of them is more just an idea versus the deck itself. But this is just, this idea works for me. I have noticed that when I'm going through a depressive episode, it seems more like my inner child, or especially my inner teenager, is trying to say something. And I feel like she maybe has a louder voice or needs to have a louder voice and needs to speak up and be heard. So I have noticed that taking tarot decks that really connect with my inner child or my inner teenager I feel silly because I didn't grab the one that I associate with my inner teenager, but that is the Lovely Omens Tarot, which I should do a whole video on that. See, I'm getting ideas as I'm doing this, but this is tends to be my inner one of my inner child decks. This is the Moon Crystal Tarot. As you guys know, I'm obsessed with Sailor Moon. I have a Sailor Moon tattoo. Well, that's my tarot card one, on my arm. You know, um, so I love this deck. To me, I one of the reasons why I love Sailor Moon is just because it's always been very empowering for me, and that was how I connected to it as a kid, and so um, I still have that association. If this card would focus, and to me, it just brings about that like empower. I'm a nerd, like I love superhero stuff, and so that's what Sailor Moon has always been for me. And when I was younger, I used to pretend to be a superhero all the time, and I think that that's one of the things that speaks to my inner child. But when it comes to my inner teenager, I think a lot of the times she tends to come up if I'm having imposter syndrome, like the voice in your head that says, "Yeah, right. You know, you're not. What are you? Are you kidding me? Like, you really think you're that good? Like, you're not that good." There are just so many times where I just turn to her and I'm like, you know what, honey, I'm here how you feel, but I'm not here for it. And it's not to completely disregard my inner teenager, but I do like doing things that speak to my inner teenager in a way too. And I was a goth kid in high school, which probably isn't surprising if you look at me right now, but um there are certain things like I'll listen to certain music that I listened to in high school if I feel like my inner teenager needs to have a voice. And for me, that's like the OG Linkin Park or Evanescence or and I tend to feel like that really helps. Sometimes I'll do that in the car while I'm driving and sing to it and stuff. And that also really helps. But the next deck I'm going to mention, which I'm struggling with opening, is Gentle Tarot. This deck is so fantastic and it is so good for this type of situation. If you want to talk about a deck that, for me, I mean, connecting to nature when I'm going through a depressive episode is really, really important. So there's that aspect of it to this deck, especially right now when it is not super awesome outside. It's very icy and cold and kind of bleak. And I'm so ready to claw myself out of winter. One of the reasons why I am now a redhead again because I just needed color. But yeah, this deck is fantastic and the guidebook is incredible. I don't know how to even really I don't have the proper words for this deck. I really don't. I just it really speaks to me, especially when I'm going through something like this, and how the guidebook is written. It's very much just gentle. I mean, that's the best way to put it, but also very empowering. And this deck packs a punch in a way that you wouldn't quite expect. So I do highly recommend the Gentle Tarot. Not to mention, you would be supporting a beautiful indigenous independent artist. That's always a plus. Um, but yeah, this is by Marion the Sky, and she has an Etsy. I actually think she just released the pocket version. I'm throwing cards. Pocket version of this deck too, which is really cool. But maybe someday I'll grab that because I really love this deck, but I just don't have a need for that right now personally, and I have the full size, which is beautiful. But yeah, this is something that I do recommend for or any deck that kind of does this for you. It doesn't necessarily have to be this deck. I just think that this deck is fantastic. I mean, the tagline is "Heal yourself, heal the earth." So to me, that speaks to me and how I like to deal with depression. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is spells and whatnot. Personally, for me, I tend to really go towards like candle magic. So I will take a candle with a specific intention, be it black for banishing, um, or black for protection, I guess. And just one of the things that I really like to use. to kind of give my depression a face is this card. This is from the Oracle of Echoes. If you follow me on Instagram, you will probably notice that I had recently did a post where I talked about how I've been struggling with depression and how I was going to make a video on this. Um, and yeah, I used this card. This card made me get this deck because to see a physical representation of depression like this was, I know I'm pretty sure I've talked about this card before on my channel, but to me that, I don't know, it did something for me. So I tend to put this card on my altar, and then I have like a little glass plate, and I'll actually put that above the card so the card doesn't get harmed, and then I'll burn a candle with whatever intention, be it if it's I need to just go through what I go through and process my feelings, or I don't have time for depression's shit, so we're gonna banish it. Whatever I need to do. Both are perfectly valid, both are perfectly helpful, as long as you are getting the help that you need. So I hope that this video was helpful for you guys on some of my tips and tricks for dealing with depression as a witch and some of the things that I tend to utilize. The other thing I will suggest before I go is never underestimate the power of grounding exercises. For me, that usually means putting my feet on the grass. I can't do that right now. The grass is frozen. So I've been kind of struggling with that one. But if you're in warmer climates and you're going through a depressive episode, get your hands dirty. Get your feet in the grass. Get your feet in the sand or whatever, because that sounds incredible to me right now. Just practice grounding exercises because it does help pull you back in. And I do tend to feel like I am disconnected when I'm having a depressive episode. That's what it's been like this whole month for me. And it's been really hard because I have wanted to go to my altar. Even though I completely underestimate the power of just lighting some damn candles and sitting there and talking to Freya or Frigg or Hell about what I'm experiencing and how it sucks. And, I don't one of the people who used to do that for me was my mother. I would call her and talk to her, and she would just listen. And I kind of forget that I can still do that with her too, or I can still do that with my deities because it's cathartic to just get it out. So yeah, I hope this was helpful, and I'll be more regular soon, but I'm just kind of going through what I'm going through, and I figured I would come on here and just give you guys some suggestions of how I've been dealing with it and hopefully what you can do if you're struggling too. So, yeah, thank you for watching, guys, and as always, blessed be.